In later years, letting go too quickly can create a different kind of loss. Not the loss of things, but the loss of steadiness that comes from moving at your own pace. If this feeling sounds familiar, you may recognize Elaine. She's in her mid-60s, living alone now in a comfortable apartment after downsizing from the home that held decades of her life. The move made sense. The space fits her days better. And yet, as she settles into these quieter routines, she notices a gentle unease beneath the surface. A feeling that simplifying too fast might erase something she hasn't fully understood yet. Elaine isn't holding on out of fear or sentimentality. Her tension is softer than that. It's the sense that some things still support her in ways that aren't obvious at first glance. She wants ease, yes, but she also wants to recognize which parts of her life still need time to land before being released. There's a quiet wisdom in that hesitation, even if it doesn't always feel confident. This episode lives in that pause, not as a warning and not as a delay, but as an invitation to notice what discernment can offer when speed is no longer the goal. Sometimes relief doesn't come from letting go faster, but from understanding what's still doing important work beneath the surface. And this is the kind of space we hold here on Wise Aging Seniors. A place to slow decisions down, to look at change thoughtfully, and to honour the many ways people live, adapt, and settle into new seasons. Whether you're living alone with a partner, or finding your footing after a transition, these moments of uncertainty are part of the process. As Elaine's hesitation opens into reflection, something important becomes clear. Waiting isn't always avoidance. Sometimes it's wisdom, asking for just a little more time to speak. One of the first things Elaine notices isn't a problem to solve, but a feeling she keeps returning to. Certain items in her apartment don't seem especially useful anymore, yet they offer a sense of ease she hasn't fully named. A familiar chair by the window, a soft throw she reaches for without thinking. Objects that don't justify their presence with function, but with comfort. At first, she wonders if this is simply resistance, a reluctance to let go. But as she pays closer attention, she realizes the comfort isn't about avoiding change. It's about grounding. These items help her body and mind settle in a space that is still new to her, even months after the move. They offer continuity while her routines are still finding their shape. Elaine begins to notice how she feels when these pieces are nearby. Her shoulders drop, her breathing slows. The apartment feels less like a temporary arrangement and more like somewhere she can arrive. Comfort, she realizes, is doing quiet work here, not announcing itself, not demanding to stay, simply supporting her as she adapts. There's something reassuring in allowing that support without rushing to label it unnecessary. She doesn't need to justify comfort with usefulness. She doesn't need to decide its future yet. Letting it remain gives her time to listen to what her body already knows. As she sits with this, a new understanding forms. Comfort isn't random. It often shows up where adjustment is still happening, where something inside hasn't fully settled. Removing it too quickly can create a subtle instability, even if the space looks more streamlined. Elaine allows herself to pause instead of edit. She lets comfort be present without explanation. And in doing so, she notices that these items aren't holding her back. They're holding her steady. That realization lingers. Because once comfort is seen as information rather than clutter, it changes how everything else is approached. And it becomes clear that this comfort wasn't accidental. And it wasn't the only thing asking for patience. After allowing comfort to remain without explanation, Elaine becomes aware of something else unfolding quietly. Some belongings don't just offer ease, they seem to hold her attention in a different way. Not sentiment exactly, and not nostalgia. More like a subtle invitation to notice who she has been becoming. There are items she doesn't actively use, yet she hesitates to move them along. A notebook she hasn't opened in years. A piece of artwork that no longer fits the space the way it once did. They don't call out loudly, but they seem unfinished, as if their role isn't complete yet. Not because they need to stay forever, but because they still have something to show her. Elaine begins to see that these objects aren't about the past in the way she expected. They aren't pulling her backward. They're reflecting patterns, how she once spent her time, what once mattered enough to slow her down, the rhythms that shaped her days. In noticing them, she isn't reliving old chapters. She's recognizing how those chapters quietly inform the one she's in now. What surprises her is how meaning arrives without effort. She doesn't need to sit down and analyze anything. A glance is enough. A moment of stillness. She notices how her body responds, how her attention lingers or moves on. Some items feel complete once acknowledged. Others ask for a little more time. This changes how she thinks about letting go. Instead of treating decisions as final judgments, she allows them to unfold. She gives herself permission to learn from what's still present. Not to extract lessons deliberately, but to let understanding rise naturally in its own time. Elaine realizes that meaning doesn't always arrive fully formed. Sometimes it comes in layers, revealing itself only after the space around it has quieted. Rushing past these moments would have made the apartment simpler, perhaps, but it would have left something unresolved inside her. She allows that realization to settle without needing to act on it. Because once she sees that some objects are still teaching her about identity, rhythm, and change, she understands that patience is part of the process. And as she looks around the room again, she senses something she hadn't noticed before. There was more in those spaces than she first realized. As Elaine sits with what some objects are still revealing, she notices a different impulse quietly threading through her thoughts. A pull toward speed. A feeling that if she keeps going, keeps clearing, keeps simplifying, the uncertainty beneath it all might settle faster. It's subtle. It doesn't feel frantic or careless. It feels purposeful, productive. There are moments when letting go quickly offers a sense of control, especially when life itself has recently shifted. Downsizing, new routines, quieter days, all of it can create a background hum of uncertainty. Moving faster feels like a way to steady that hum. Elaine recognizes this in herself during certain afternoons. When she feels slightly unmoored, she's more tempted to make decisive cuts, to clear another shelf, to remove anything that slows her down. In those moments, speed feels safer than sitting with questions that don't yet have answers. What she begins to understand is that this urge isn't really about the objects. It's about regaining footing. Clearing quickly creates the impression of forward motion, even when what's actually needed is grounding. The danger isn't in letting go. It's in using momentum to avoid listening. This realization changes how she approaches the process. She starts noticing when decisiveness feels calm and when it feels driven. When releasing something brings ease and when it brings a hollow quiet that doesn't quite land right. The difference is subtle, but once felt, it's hard to ignore. Elaine begins to see restraint differently, not as hesitation or backsliding, but as care. Choosing not to act immediately becomes a way of protecting her own steadiness. It allows space for emotions to settle and for understanding to catch up with action. There's something reassuring in that shift. She doesn't need to prove progress by how much she removes. She can trust herself to pause when speed feels like a shield rather than a choice. In those pauses, she finds a gentler confidence returning, one that isn't built on control but on attention. And as that awareness settles in, she naturally slows down even more. Because once restraint is recognized as care, there's no longer a need to rush past what still deserves time. As Elaine continues to slow her pace, her attention shifts in a different direction, away from meaning and memory and toward her body. Not in a dramatic way, but in small, practical moments that are easy to overlook. A lamp that's easy on her eyes in the evening. A chair that supports her back just right. A rug that keeps her footing steady when she moves through the room first thing in the morning. These items don't carry stories. They aren't tied to identity or sentiment. And because of that, she once assumed they should be easy to replace or remove. But now she notices how her body responds when they're present, and how quickly discomfort appears when they're gone. Elaine realizes that some things aren't kept for emotional reasons at all. They're kept because they quietly make life easier. They reduce strain. They support balance, rest and movement in ways that don't announce themselves. Their value isn't symbolic, it's physical. This recognition feels grounding. It shifts the question from, "Do I still need this?" to, "How does this support me now?" And the answer isn't abstract. It shows up in how long she can sit comfortably, how relaxed she feels at the end of the day, how confidently she moves through her own space. What surprises her is how personal this practicality feels. These choices aren't about following guidelines or preparing for decline. They're about honoring how her body experiences the world right now. What feels supportive to her might not make sense to anyone else. And that's exactly the point. Elaine allows herself to stop justifying these items. She doesn't frame them as temporary or explain their presence away. She lets them belong without apology. In doing so, she notices a subtle shift in how she relates to her home. It feels less like a concept she's shaping and more like a place that's responding to her needs. That awareness lingers, because once she sees how deeply personal physical support can be, it raises a different kind of question altogether. Not about what to remove next, but about what else might be quietly helping her live with more ease than she realized. With all of these reflections in motion, Elaine begins to notice a quieter truth taking shape beneath them. Not everything becomes clear through logic. Some decisions simply aren't ready yet, and no amount of reasoning can move them forward before their time. She recognizes this in the moments when she tries to talk herself into letting something go. The arguments are sound, the reasons make sense, and yet something inside her doesn't settle. The discomfort isn't resistance, it's misalignment. The decision may be correct on paper, but emotionally it hasn't arrived. Elaine starts to see that readiness isn't something she can manufacture. It doesn't respond to pressure or deadlines. It comes from a gradual internal shift, one that often happens quietly without effort. When she waits for that shift, the decision feels lighter. When she rushes it, even the right choice carries weight. This understanding brings a surprising sense of trust. She doesn't need to debate herself endlessly or push through uncertainty. She can let decisions rest until they feel clear in her body, not just in her mind. That patience doesn't stall progress. It protects it. Over time, Elaine notices something subtle changing. Items that once felt complicated begin to feel neutral. The urgency around them fades. Without forcing anything, she finds that clarity starts to arrive on its own. Not all at once, and not dramatically, but steadily. She realizes that respecting timing is its own form of wisdom. Rules can guide, but they can't replace readiness. And when she allows that truth to shape her choices, the process becomes gentler, more humane. There's a quiet confidence that comes with this shift. She's no longer measuring progress by how quickly decisions are made, but by how well they land. And in honouring that timing, something within her begins to settle. Not because everything is decided, but because she trusts herself to know when it will be. As these reflections settle into one another, a clearer understanding begins to take shape for Elaine, not as a conclusion, but as a quiet recalibration. Letting go wisely after 60 isn't about momentum or decisiveness. It's about honouring timing, about recognising that urgency often belongs to earlier seasons of life, while steadiness belongs to this one. Elaine sees now that patience isn't passive. It's protective. It safeguards her sense of self as much as it protects her space. By allowing decisions to arrive in their own time, she preserves trust in herself. Trust that she knows when something has truly finished its work and when it hasn't. There's relief in that realization. It releases her from the pressure to prove progress through visible change. She no longer feels measured by how much she lets go or how quickly she moves. Instead, she notices how much calmer she feels when her actions match her readiness. That alignment becomes its own reassurance. When we return to Elaine, the apartment isn't polished or complete. Some items remain where they are. Others are clearly waiting. But the space feels settled in a different way. Not because everything has been decided, but because nothing feels rushed. Elaine moves through her home with more ease now. She pauses without second-guessing herself. She allows things to stay without guilt and to leave without drama when the time feels right. There's no internal negotiation running beneath her movements anymore. What's changed most is her relationship with pace. She trusts it. She no longer feels the need to justify slowness or explain why something remains. Her home reflects that trust, imperfect, lived in, and responsive to her life as it is now. And in that steadiness she finds something quietly powerful. Not the satisfaction of being finished, but the confidence of knowing she doesn't need to rush herself to get there. Wisdom, especially in later years, often shows up as the quiet choice to honour readiness and ease, trusting that what truly belongs will become clear without being forced. Thank you for sharing this reflective moment. Taking time to listen to yourself in this way, without urgency, without judgment, is a form of care that deserves recognition. Many of the most meaningful changes unfold gently when we allow space for understanding rather than pushing for certainty. If this episode resonated, and you'd like to support this kind of thoughtful conversation reaching others, you can do so using the Hype feature on YouTube. On the YouTube app, scroll down and swipe left on the comment preview carousel until the Hype button appears. Tap it, choose how many points you'd like to give, and confirm your selection. You receive 3 free Hypes each week, and each one helps this video rise on the leaderboard so more people can discover it. Smaller creators receive a larger boost. and you may see a Hype Star badge as a sign of community support. You're also warmly invited to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications if you'd like to continue these reflections together. There's no pressure, just an open door to return when it feels right. We're growing wise aging seniors together, slowly and intentionally, valuing patience over speed, honouring lived experience, and choosing care as we shape spaces and lives that truly fit who we are now.